that empower the MLS to take action against you?
You know, it's interesting. You know, the MLS, at least in our case, has been a big challenge from the standpoint that the rules of evidence don't apply, and there's no appeals process outside the MLS. So, in essence, you have a monopoly. In fact, there's argument that there may even be an antitrust case brewing against the multiple listing service as we speak. I'll give you an example. We had, at one point, I had Mr. and Mrs. Seller are getting a divorce. They're doing a short sale. Mr. Seller gets upset with Mrs. Seller and removes the doorknob from the house that has my key box attached to it. He throws the key box and the doorknob in the house, puts a new doorknob on, shuts the door, doesn't tell me, doesn't tell Mrs. Seller, doesn't tell anybody. That night, an agent goes to show the house. There's no key box on the house. Well, my listing says there is a key box on the house, and so technically I'm responsible to make sure that there's a key box on that house. But as you can see, I have no way of knowing that that key box is not there. Well, do you think this agent called me up and said, hey, Michael, there's no key box on the house? Of course not. What do? They file a complaint with the multiple listing service. What does the multiple listing service do? Not only do they find me guilty of not having correct information in the multiple listing service, but they fined me $15,000.
Wait a minute. $15,000?
$15,000.
Is that a standard fee in Washington?
Well, and therein lies another big challenge with the Northwest Multiple Listing Service in Washington State, and that is that there is no standard, that it's very much subjective. In fact, last year we paid over $60,000 in fines on issues just like this one, where we had no way of knowing, no way of telling, that were things beyond our control. In fact, we received the largest fine ever issued by the multiple listing service, which was in excess of $50,000. And so, it's insanity. And what they do, I'll give you another example. One day, one of my agents, a buyer's agent, went out to show a property. Now, this was a mistake on his part. In the multiple listing service, it said that he needed to call the homeowner first before he goes out and shows it. Our agent made a mistake. He went out and showed it and he did not call ahead of time. A clear violation, a clear mistake. Yes, he made a mistake. Nobody questions that. And it's the first violation he's ever had with the multiple listing service. They fined him $2,500 for making that mistake. Oh, but in the same month and on the same report, another agent from another company, a big competitor in the marketplace, a company that's got 3,400 agents in the marketplace, another agent in that company did the exact same thing and got zero fine. In fact, I can show you statistics where this particular company, who holds most of the board positions on the multiple listing service, by the way, it's actually, and I'll even tell you, it's Windermere Real Estate holds, a very strong position inside the multiple listing service with board positions and such. And I can show you statistically how, if you look at the average fines in the multiple listing service, Windermere is fined on average 1/3 of the average fine for the multiple, and I am fined 3 times the multiple average for the same offense.
Is there a court of appeal when the fine like that is issued?
And that's exactly the problem. Is there is no court of appeals because it's a private organization, and it's a hearing process that happens within that organization. So not only do the rules of evidence not apply, so what that means is they don't even have to be right. They can just say, well, we don't like this guy and we think he's not a good guy, or we think that, he's, and it doesn't even have to be that I'm not a good guy. It could just be that they're not doing a lot of business and this particular person is. It could be a lot of reasons. But at the end of the day, there are no rules of evidence that apply, so they can subjectively fine someone, whatever they choose to fine them, and you cannot appeal that to a court of law. There's no appeals process. And if you don't like it, well, great, then don't belong to the multiple listing service. But as we all know, you cannot sell real estate and not belong to your local MLS.
So you just have to write the check.
But you just have to write the check. And what happened in my case was I would just do that. I said, you know what? Obviously, they're not going to rule our way. It doesn't matter if we're right or wrong. They're not going to rule our way. And part of the challenge is that in the Northwest Multiple Listing Service, that they don't pay when your membership dues are not paid on a per transaction basis. They're paid on a per agent basis. And because the membership in the multiple is down, there's not as many agents. They, like everyone else, are looking for funds. So where do they find it? They find it in the people that are doing the most business, and they find them much more than they find everyone else in the multiple. And they'll tell you, well, we just want to make sure that you're following the rules. But in essence, if you look at the actual cases and you really dig into it, that's not what's happening.
So they look at real estate company A, and they see they have maybe a few listings, and they look at Michael Hellickson, and he has hundreds of listings. Same violation. Your fine is $15,000. Theirs is $500.
Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly.
Unbelievable. So,
and the challenge, and you can look at this historically too, Eric, and this is another sad piece of the truth here, is that, this isn't isolated to Michael Hellickson. Before me, there was another agent in my marketplace who was a very big producer, and they did the same thing to this gentleman. And I'll tell you, a lot of people in our marketplace complain about this guy and say, oh, every transaction I had with him was terrible, or he's a bad guy, and yada, yada, yada. And I got to tell you, I've done several transactions with this particular agent, and they've all been great transactions. I've not had a problem at all with them. And so I think what happens is, a lot of it is jealousy. A lot of it is lack of understanding for how top producers do business. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. This particular person was all but run out of the business as well, and where he did his best year, 420 transactions, now this gentleman, I think he's got 20 listings now, and they virtually ran him out of the business. And they've done this time and time again. I've watched this happen with several top producing agents in our marketplace, where they rise to the top and they kind of get beaten down by the industry to some. It's almost like the crab trying to crawl out of the pot. If you've got a pot full of crabs or a bucket full of crabs and one tries to crawl out, the others grab onto it and pull it back down into the bucket.
Right. Now, Mike, some of the agents listening to this call might say that, well, in the case where the angry divorce seller took the lockbox off and threw it in the house and changed the locks, where were you in terms of inspecting the properties you have to list, especially if they're REOs? Aren't you required to do periodic inspections to ensure that the property the sign is there and lawn is being watered and access is available? Where were you there?
And it's interesting you mentioned that. And we do that, Derek. We did do weekly inspections of our listings, particularly our REO properties. But again, this happens same day. The day this guy pulls the key box off the house, and his wife, subsequently had a conversation with him, so we know the dates. We know that this happened the same day that this agent went out to show it. I mean, literally, short of me placing somebody on the doorstep of that property 24/7, there would be no way to have known that this is what's going on. And this was, obviously deliberate on the homeowner's part, the Mr. Seller's part. He was doing this as a way of getting even with his wife because he didn't want to sell the house, and she did. And unfortunately, we got caught up in the middle of it, and we got kind of caught in the crossfire there.
So this trouble really began with refusing to let the Department of Real Estate in to audit your files. Was this a standard audit initially, or was this a result of some other investigation, and now they're wanting to audit you?
No, it started off as part of a standard audit. And so really in the state of Washington, what would happen is every time you move your office, they do this audit of all your files. Now, they say it's, well, we just want to help make sure you get started off on the right foot. In reality, what it is they want to make sure that you're doing things their way, and they want to audit all your files and see if they can find anything that you're doing wrong. And so, where it started off as standard, it became much more than that.
I see. So how does the short sale side of this come into play? Was the state also concerned about your short sale activities, you following procedures, that kind of thing?
Yeah, and they were. And, it's interesting because short sales definitely bring a higher level of propensity for problems than do a lot of other types of transactions. The challenge is, in today's economy, it's very difficult to be a real estate agent and not be involved in short sales at some level. Here you're dealing with homeowners that are in very dire financial straits. The last thing they want to do is sell the home. So there's a lot of emotion involved. There's a lot of financial hardship involved in most cases. And emotions do run high. And it becomes a situation where oftentimes they're going to look for money or they're going to look for someone to blame regardless of what's happening because, everybody wants to feel better about what it is they're doing, and they want things oftentimes to be someone else's fault. But I'll give you an example. One common thing that homeowners will get upset with in a short sale is they get upset with how long it takes to go through the process and the fact that they don't always hear as often as they would like status updates as to what's going on. Now, in some cases, this is a problem because the agent's not communicating, but by and large, this is a problem because the lien holders aren't communicating with the agent and aren't giving updates to the agent and aren't walking this process through in a timely enough fashion for everyone to really have the feeling that it's moving forward. And so the agent may, in fact, be doing a great job, but they're not hearing back from the lender. So my advice to agents would be, good news, no news, or bad news, make sure you're contacting your homeowners at least once a week and updating them, even if it's just to say, hey, we've been contacting your bank and we haven't heard back from them. We'll let you know as soon as we do. But yes, certainly a lot of this has to do with homeowners. But in fact, Eric, if you'd like, we can go through line by line each of the accusations they made.
And let's do that. I think it would be helpful for those who are doing short sales right now. Go ahead.
Well, the first allegation they made, that it was improper for me to claim that I was the number one agent in the state. And, this is a frustration. This is something that every agent out there who's a top agent in their marketplace needs to be very careful of. Frankly, we are the number one, or we have been the number one agent in Washington State, and we can back that up with actual numbers. And so for them to say that we're not allowed to make that claim is really not just, and it's certainly not in keeping with the free economy that we have. And so ultimately, that one has been mind-boggling to all of us. We also run what's called a guaranteed sale program. Now, this is one that there are a lot of agents across the country that are offering a guaranteed sale program. Ours was that we would buy a home, for those that participated in our guaranteed sale program, we would buy their home if it didn't sell in 30 days. Now, of course, restrictions applied, and we had a contract, and if they wanted to participate in that program, they had to sign the contract, and ultimately, I was in a position to pay cash for any of my listings. So to say that I wouldn't be able or willing to honor the guaranteed sale program is, again, an absolute misstatement on the state's part, and, again, cast doubt on an otherwise stainless reputation. So
they doubted that you could do it. Did they ask for any evidence of your financial ability to do this before they said that, this was false advertising?
Not once. Not once. In fact, again, this is a perfect example of where they fired the gun before they found out whether or not they were aiming it at the right target. Not once did we have an opportunity to respond to their malicious allegations prior to their temporary suspension of our real estate licenses. And, had we had that opportunity for due process, the damage would not have occurred. We would not have lost the immediate $4 million that we lost, in addition to the hundreds of millions of dollars in lifetime value of our careers and that of our coaching business. So, yeah, I was surprised, particularly on this one. Another thing that's very important and something that agents across the country should keep in mind is that if you're going to offer a guaranteed sale program, it'd be real helpful for you to make sure that you have your homeowner sign something saying that if they're not going to be in the program, have them sign something that says that they understand that they will not be participating in the guaranteed sale program. And I would do that at the time of the listing. So
even if you've offered a guarantee program, they've declined it, and you need to get that in writing from them that they're declining participation.
That would be my recommendation, absolutely. To protect yourself against actions from the state like this. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. Another one they said was that we were encouraging homeowners to stop making payments on their home loans, which again is not the truth. We've never told anyone not to make their payment on their home loan. Now, we do tell them about the landscape. We do let them know that